Chapter 149 to 155. The Sage of Six Path and the First Miko. Listening to Miko-sama's story, Kuroto was a little dazed. Kuroto isn't sure about the first Miko, but that's not the case with the Sage of Six Path. To others, the Sage of Six Path who created the shinobi world may have been a character from the mythology, but that's not the case with Kuroto, because he regards the Sage of Six Paths as just a powerful figure worth admiration. Moreover, Kuroto knows that the Sage of Six Path may have been dead physically for countless years, but that doesn't mean he has disappeared. His spirit still exists within the shinobi world, monitoring the order of the world and maintaining the peace of this world as per his own standard. This is one of the reasons why Kuroto has always been very cautious of his actions, because no one could know just how powerful the Sage of Six Paths may be, even if he is in his soul state. After all, not only he saved the lives but also distributed half of his chakra to both Uzumaki Naruto and Uchiha Sasuke at the most critical point in the Fourth Great Shinobi War. And just from receiving the gifts from the Sage of Six Path, Naruto mastered the Six Path Sage Mode and Yin-Yang Release. As a result, not only was he capable of using the truth-seeking balls along with many other techniques, but also managed to save Guy, who was sure to die, having opened the 8th gate and created an entirely new eye for Kakashi. While Sasuke awakened the 6th Tomo Rinnegan that even allowed him to learn a special type of rare spacetime technique, mastered all the chakra nature. As a result, he could play around with all the tailed beast as toys with just one look, can travel between dimensions along with many other techniques. Therefore, Kuroto believes that even if the Sage of Six Path is not as strong as his peak, he is still the strongest in the shinobi world even in his soul state, and no way in hell would Kuroto want to offend such a being. Therefore, Kuroto is very mindful of his actions. After all, he is more than sure that by now he would have definitely caught the Sage of Six Path's attention. Therefore, Kuroto can't afford to do something that would make him an enemy of such a god. As for the treasured tools of the Sage of Six Path, Kuroto recalled it, and it seems that among the 5 tools used by the Kinkaku and Ginkaku brothers, there was indeed a gourd tool. If I recall it correctly, it was called Benihiseigo. Does that mean that the gourd was also picked up from the mother tree of the Morning Valley? With this question in his mind, Kuroto walked towards the gourd vine that hung between the small tree hole and observed it with the Tenseigan. Although the gourd vine hung inside the tree hole looked very ordinary, but it contained a very high amount of natural energy. After looking at the vine, Kuroto observed the mother tree and noticed that the tree was acting as a medium of transferring the natural energy into the gourd, and finally, the roots of the mother tree went way deep into the ground and absorbed natural energy from the earth veins. So, this mother tree can absorb natural energy from the earth veins. After discovering this strangeness, Kuroto was really surprised. And while Kuroto was thinking about all this, Miko-sama also came near the lake and spoke. The first Miko turned herself into the tree after separating from her other half, and the Miko of the further generations have always guarded this valley. In fact, other than the Miko of each generation, nobody in the entire world knows of this place. You are the second one if the legend of the Sage of Six Path is true. It is indeed my honor, Kuroto murmured in a daze. The mother tree produces a gourd vine every 30 years and each gourd is an excellent material to create a treasured artifact, added Miko-sama. So when will this gourd be ready for the harvest? That's where I said that you were lucky to have come at just the right time. This gourd has fully matured a few months ago, and has been ready for the harvest. With a chuckle, she continued, if you had come at a later date, I might have already used it to make some artifact. Kuroto was indeed happy, but there was a hesitation. How can he take such a precious thing? Miroku noticed Kuroto's hesitation and spoke, if you feel uncomfortable about it, then think of this gourd as the payment for the task of eliminating Yomi and his cult from the land of demons. That sounds acceptable, doesn't it? Kuroto nodded. If he was to still deny it, then that would be spitting on the kindness of Miko-sama, who is akin to a teacher for Kuroto. With Kuroto's nod, Miroku smiled and plucked off the gourd from the tree. As soon as it was detached from the tree, the gourd's color changed from green to cyan and it looked very ordinary from the outside, but after experiencing decades of growth under natural energy, it has turned into an extremely rare material. As per Kuroto's requests, Miko-sama added Miko's Fuinjutsu on the small gourd which strengthened its chakra isolating ability and then passed it to Kuroto. After receiving the gourd from Miko-sama, Kuroto found that exactly as he wanted, the chakra isolating ability of the gourd was extremely strong, so much so that even his Tenseigan chakra couldn't pass through it. With that done, Kuroto immediately walked a distance and after placing the gourd before him, he released the Ryumyaku's seal. As the Ryumyaku's seal was lifted, this heavy chakra pressure of Ryumyaku immediately swept the entire mountain cave and the heavy wind started rising above. Wish. 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 Miko-sama understood that the Ryumyaku sealed within Kuroto-kun was about to come out and hid behind a large piece of stone, and only poked half of her from the side to see the appearance of the legendary Ryumyaku. At this time, a purple figure emerged out of Kuroto's belly and took the shape into the air. Undoubtedly, the purple figure was the body of the Ryumyaku. Since the Ryumyaku isn't a real tailed beast, therefore, even if it is extracted from Kuroto's main body, it wouldn't endanger his life, not to mention that spiritually he will still be connected with the Ryumyaku, so no threat. The Ryumyaku that was no longer subject to the seal restraints immediately swelled rapidly and covered the whole sky, as a result shadowing the entire cave mountain. Looking at the chubby figure of Ryumyaku floating in the air, the Miko-sama hiding behind the large rock fell into a dazed state for a second as she was reminded of the Morio, but immediately that feeling went away as there was no maliciousness from this chakra. Moreover, she just couldn't feel scared by the chubby and cute figure of Ryumyaku. She really didn't expect that the legendary Ryumyaku would look like this. From the corner of his eyes, Kuroto looked at Miko-sama trying to restrain her laughter, and he couldn't help feeling embarrassed about it. Not wanting to think about it, he hurriedly sealed the Ryumyaku inside the gourd. Thankfully, there was no resistance from the Ryumyaku, so as soon as Kuroto cast the seal, it was sucked into the small gourd. With that completed, Kuroto finally breathed a sigh of relief. After the seal was completed, Miko-sama came over and asked while staring at the gourd, "Why does it have that appear?" Before Miko-sama could finish her words, Kuroto hurriedly exclaimed, It was an accident, that's all, I didn't design it like that." Miko-sama chuckled looking at Kuroto's embarrassment. "I didn't know that you have such cute interests. If Cheyenne were to see it, she would definitely love it." With no retort left to Miko-sama's teasing, Kuroto could only lower his head to hide the embarrassment and pretend to check the state of the small gourd. With the Ryumyaku sealed within the gourd, as long as Kuroto has the small gourd to his side, he can continue to take chakra from the Ryumyaku because of his spiritual connection with the Ryumyaku. Therefore, he is still an artificial Jinchuriki. The only problem with the efficiency, because of the extra layer of isolation thanks to the gourd, the efficiency would be decreased to a certain extent. But with no other option available, this is already the best option Kuroto could have asked for at this time, so instead of complaining, he focused on the other issue. And that is the increased danger of the Ryumyaku going on a rampage. Since the Ryumyaku no longer being sealed within his body, the danger does increase, but thanks to the sealing technique placed by Miko-sama, this danger is still within the acceptable range, and as long as he doesn't excessively use Ryumyaku's chakra or completely release Ryumyaku, the probability of Ryumyaku running away would be very low. With that out of the way, since the size of the gourd is only about as big as a small water bottle, so Kuroto tied a string around it and wrapped the gourd directly around his waist. With the issue of Ryumyaku resolved, Kuroto turned towards Miko-sama and bowed thankfully. "I am again grateful to you for not only helping me but also sharing such valuable information and treasure with me, and I am even more grateful that you see me worthy enough to have your trust. Now, as promised, I will eliminate Yomi and his cult. Please give me all the information that you have so that I can immediately get rid of them." Miko-sama smiled kindly and nodded, after which she took out a scroll and handed it to Kuroto. Taking the scroll, Kuroto looked over to see the intel mapping the several possible strongholds of Yomi, including the information about the several main leaders under him. Among them, a character was particularly highlighted with red ink, with the name, Yomi. After reading the scroll, Kuroto nodded towards Miko-sama. "Please rest assured, Miko-sama, I will completely solve your troubles this time. The cult-worshipping Morio that has entrenched the land of demons is not very strong, even its leader Yomi is at most a Jonin class strength, not someone Kuroto has to worry about. Considering his current strength coupled with the information provided by Miko-sama, eliminating the entire cult would be a spring breeze. The only thing he needs to worry about is to make sure that no fish slip the net in this hunt that would again cause her any trouble." Miko-sama chuckled. "You know, initially, I was actually thinking of entrusting this as an official task to Kanahagakur, but with Kuroto-kun promising to help with the matter, I guess I wouldn't have to worry about it." Kuroto nodded, and with that, after he escorted Miko-sama back to her temple, he immediately rushed towards the cult strongholds marked on the map. Mount Mayaboku. Jiraiya hurriedly spoke. "Boss, you summoned me so anxiously, what's the matter? The matter with the Kumogakure hasn't been resolved completely, so I don't have much time in my hands." Sage Fukasaku jumped on Jiraiya's shoulder and banged his head while he said, "Of course the matter is very important, that is why I brought you here so urgently." Jiraiya listened to Sage Fukasaku's words while rubbing the small bump on his head and asked, "What important matter?" Fukasaku shook his head and explained, "I don't know exactly, but it seems to be about the child of the prophecy. You'll know for yourself when you meet Ojiji-sama." "Oh. Alright." When it was mentioned that it was about the child of the prophecy, Jiraiya immediately became serious. According to the prophecy of the great Toad Sage, the child of the prophecy will become a ninja that will bring great change to the world of shinobi. Therefore, the child of prophecy is a key figure. And according to what the great Toad Sage said, that ninja will be Jiraiya's disciple, and the choice will be upon Jiraiya that will determine the direction of the change. For this reason, Jiraiya has always been traveling around the shinobi world. In addition to his natural unwillingness to be unbound, there is also the thought of the child of prophecy mentioned by the great Toad Sage. Although Jiraiya initially believed one of Minato or Nagato to be the child of prophecy, but unfortunately, they weren't. And now that he has been summoned to the land of toads for some reason that involves the child of the prophecy, so he was immediately very serious and followed after Fukasaku to the hall of great Toad Sage. Arriving before great Toad Sage, Fukasaku jumped down from Jiraiya's shoulder and spoke, "Ojiji-sama, Jiraiya-chan is here." Immediately kneeling before great Toad Sage, Jiraiya greeted Gamamaru with respect. Great Toad Sage squinted slightly and spoke with a smile, "Oh, Jiraiya-chan is here." After the greeting, Jiraiya asked urgently, "Ojiji-sama, have you found the child of prophecy?" Great Toad Sage shook his head. Jiraiya was a little disappointed and asked, "Then the purpose of summoning me?" Hearing Jiraiya's question, Gamamaru seemed to suddenly remember something and said slowly, "Not long ago, there were some changes in the prophecy. In my dream, I saw a person with royal blue eyes." As soon as he heard this, Jiraiya immediately came back to spirit. "Is he the child of the prophecy?" Gamamaru shook his head again. "Unfortunately, I am not sure. This ninja has never appeared in any of my dreams before." Royal blue eyes? After a pause, Jiraiya frowned and said, "Ojiji-sama, are there any other clues?" Just relying on the clue of royal blue eyes is very difficult to find. As if he suddenly remembered something, Gamamaru added, "Ah, he was wearing the forehead protector of your Konohagakure." "Ha, you should have said so earlier, now it would be much easier to find." Jiraiya laughed happily and turned around and was about to leave. Fukasaku hurriedly stopped Jiraiya. "Wait, Jiraiya-chan, Ojiji-sama hasn't finished yet." Since Great Toad Sage wasn't finished yet, he immediately stopped and sat cross-legged, staring straight at Gamamaru. After a while, the Great Toad Sage spoke. "In the subsequent dream, the ninja with the royal blue eyes never appeared again, not once." Jiraiya frowned and had a thoughtful expression on his face. If the ninja with royal blue eyes didn't have some important role that would affect the entire shinobi world, then the Great Toad Sage wouldn't have mentioned him to Jiraiya. Now what's troublesome is that this person stopped coming in any more prophecies. Shima, sitting on the other side of the Great Toad Sage, glanced at him and muttered, "Ojiji-sama must be confused." Fukasaku immediately scolded him, "What the hell are you talking about?" Gamamaru just smiled nonchalantly and then said to Jiraiya, "There must be interference of some power. This ninja is alive, that I can be sure of, but he must be around something that is disturbing my power of prediction." After thinking a little, Jiraiya asked again, "Ojiji-sama, when was it that you first saw him?" Gamamaru replied, "Not long ago." Jiraiya asked helplessly, "How long ago was this not long ago?" Great Toad Sage replied, "Maybe half a year ago, maybe a year ago. I am not so sure." The Great Toad Sage has been alive for over a millennium. Time has lost its meaning for him and he isn't much perceptive to the passage of time anymore, therefore it is hard to recall when was it that he exactly saw the ninja with the royal blue eyes in his dream. Shima said, "Did you see, I said that the senile geezer is confused." At this time, Jiraiya stood up and said, "I understand, if he is really the child of the prophecy, I will definitely find him." Initially, Jiraiya thought that Nagato, who had the Rinnegan similar to the Sage of Six Path, is the child of the prophecy, but then he heard of Nagato's death. Later he thought that his other disciple Minato is the child of the prophecy, but then Minato too died. Although deeply frustrated and saddened, Jiraiya's determination to find the child of the prophecy has not changed, because Jiraiya firmly believes that only the child of the prophecy can finally bring true peace to this war-ridden shinobi world. Boom! With a loud door crashing sound, a figure calmly walked into the dark hall. In the main hall, the leader of the cult, Yomi, turned towards the figure and asked with a dark expression, "Who are you and why do you wish to become an enemy of Yomi?" Yomi? With a light snort, the figure continued walking forward and spoke, "The netherworld is the resting ground of the fallen. Do you think you are worthy, just cause you are called Yomi?" Yomi asked sternly, "Just who on earth are you?" The other party was covered in a full-body black cloak with golden textual prints, the symbol of yin at the chest along with the symbols of 5 chakra nature spread around the yin-yang symbol in a circle at the back, and finally, a black evil spirit mask symbolizing yin covered his face. From just one look, he appeared to be a messenger from the underworld. The figure chuckled slightly and spoke, "Who am I? I am Yama, the deity of death, one who rules over the nether world." As soon as he finished speaking, Yama appeared next to Yomi with a flicker. Too fast, was the only thought that appeared in Yomi's mind, but soon he was confused because a very familiar figure appeared before his eyes. Is that me? How come there are 2 of me? But before he could understand what was happening, his consciousness quickly blurred and fell into darkness. Thud. Accompanied by the muffled sound, the head that was momentarily floating in the air, and the torso that stood there unfazed, both fell to the ground lifelessly. Looking at Yomi whose head was separated from his body, Yama frowned slightly and muttered to himself, "Is he dead?" Although Yama doesn't take Yomi very seriously, his performance as the leader of this cult that worships Morio has been a bit surprising. Even after they were completely eliminated the last time, but within a short period of around 2 years, they have already developed so much again. Such an accomplishment is kind of difficult to achieve for a simple chunin or low-class jonin. Therefore, Yama was a bit doubtful whether this dead body really belonged to Yomi or not. A body double? No. Then is it some special type of shadow clone? This thought flashed in Yama's mind. The task of elimination of this cult is not a bounty task from the black market but a task that he took upon himself to repay Miko-sama's favor, therefore, Yama can't afford to be perfunctory about it and has to take this very seriously. Using the Tenseigan, he observed Yomi's corpse while looking at the information in the scroll in his hands that was given to him by Miko-sama. This scroll recorded a lot of information about Yomi and after multiple comparisons with the image in the scroll, Yama confirmed that the body lying before him indeed belonged to Yomi. Finally, he glanced at the corpse to check for any chakra reaction that might still be left but found nothing which clearly indicated that Yomi was indeed dead. With that confirmed, he thoroughly searched the entire stronghold and even after the complete elimination of the cult, Kuroto didn't find much money. As expected, they really did store all their money in some secret place or maybe in their black market vault. Thinking that he couldn't find any money here, Yama could only sigh helplessly. The problem of money has been giving him a headache for quite a while. The water clone creation experiment that he has carried out has consumed much of his resources, with nutrient solution almost out of stock, along with some other medicinal material that would soon be finished, so he must do everything he can to get all money he needs to continue with the experiments. Shaking his head in disappointment, Yama flickered and disappeared from the base, leaving a strange silence at the base. If not for all the corpses still lying here, nobody would have guessed that there was a massacre in here just a few moments ago. High in the sky, Hirako, wearing a high-collar black cloak with red clouds on it, stood quietly on a large bird, staring into the distance with a clawed gaze. On the side, Shino sat in a cross-legged position wearing a similar high-collar black cloak with red clouds on it and asked calmly, "Did you use that forbidden technique on this summon beast?" The corner of Hirako's mouth curved and he spoke arrogantly, "What do you think of my masterpiece?" Shino smiled, "With this, the traveling has indeed become convenient." Hirako seemed to be happy with Shino's compliment and snorted with a triumphant look, "This is a synthetic beast I cultivated using a forbidden technique." Shino's eyes flickered and he nodded in admiration, "The forbidden technique you have developed is really amazing." Hirako nodded and immediately asked, "Is the guy we are looking for really as useful as you said?" Shino put away his smile and turned serious, "To be honest, that guy isn't very strong, in fact, his personal strength is just average, but the dark medical ninjutsu he has mastered is extremely useful for both you and me." Shino, who has been traveling in the shinobi world for over a decade now, has obviously discovered many secrets of the shinobi world by virtue of his own talent and zeal, and Yomi's dark medical ninjutsu is one of those secret techniques, especially because he too is a medical nin, therefore, he is especially aware of the medical branch. However, even if he knew of these many secrets, he didn't have much energy to focus on these techniques while preparing to carry out his plan because of being a solo person. But now that he has joined the Akatsuki organization, Shino discovered that with the help of the Akatsuki, many of his plans that he thought he couldn't implement before are now being carried out very smoothly. This is why he had enough time to search for Yomi's traces and look into the dark medical ninjutsu. And because of Shino constantly advocating the dark medical ninjutsu to be extremely useful, even Hirako has become a bit interested in it. Hirako also knows that the chimera technique is quite overbearing for the physical body of a shinobi during the fusion process, therefore the caster has to bear an unusually high burden and undergo many synthetic body modifications to become suitable for the chimera technique. This is because, theoretically, a person can't carry the burden of the chimera technique, therefore, the dark medical ninjutsu that Shino has explained to Hirako has piqued his interest quite a lot. And here they are in the land of demon, searching for the person who is said to have mastered the dark medical ninjutsu to an unusually high degree. Before long, the flying beast landed in the stronghold where Yomi should be, as per the information they have collected. Jumping off the beast's back, Hirako looked around and said, "It appears that we are a step late." From the outside, everything looked normal, but there was a heavy stench of blood permeating the air, clearly telling a tale of some massacre. Shino had a gloomy face. "Damn it, who did it?" The two nodded to each other and walked inside the cave building. On the way, they could see all the corpses lying all over the place. The more inside they go, the thicker the stench. Not paying much mind to all the corpses, the two observed them and moved on towards the main hall only to find that the said leader of this cult, Yomi, too was lying in cold blood with his head separated from his torso. Hirako checked his state and said, like all the previous ones, cut off by a kunai, clean and neat, no use of any extra moves. Shino too nodded in agreement after checking the state. It seems that the attacker is very strong. This guy couldn't even put up a resistance and suffered heavily. Whether it is Shino or Hirako, both of them have very high attainment in the study of human anatomy and gross anatomy, and some extent of histology, so just from a rough look, they concluded the process of all the deaths and the strength of the person responsible for this massacre. The more concerning fact is that all the corpses lying here were dressed similarly, and the method of killing every individual was also the same. That is to say, this wasn't the work of some organization or any team, but only one person was responsible for the said massacre. However, that didn't cause them to feel sad for the killed. Both were sort of disappointed that coming here turned out to be a waste of time. While Hirako was busy thinking some things, Shino picked up Yomi's head and attached it to Yomi's torso. Hirako was confused by this meaningless action and asked with a frown, "What are you doing?" Shino just smiled and said, "Well, I want to try something, and see if that's useful." "What are you going to do? There are clearly no signs of life in his body." Hirako. "You think so? Maybe that's indeed the case, but there is no harm in trying once, right? Besides, even if he is dead, we can just take his corpse and Sasori could use it as a puppet, or we can just give it to the leader Pain, and see if he can do something about him." With that said, Shino used the forbidden technique of physical regeneration on Yomi's body, while Hirako carefully observed Yomi. Under the effect of the forbidden jutsu used by Shino, the head was again reattached to the torso. Soon the heart began to pump the blood, pulse returned to normal, the chest began to expand and contract, and the air began to flow through the nostrils, clearly indicating all the signs of being alive. Phew! As soon as he was conscious again, Yomi exhaled a breath of relief. Hirako looked at the entire process of Yomi's said resurrection from the death with interest and asked, "Are you Yomi?" Yomi, who has just regained consciousness, looked at Hirako and Shino with vigilance and asked alertly, "Who are you?" Previously, the momentum Yama displayed was very strong, and as soon as he flickered next to Yomi, Yomi realized that he wouldn't be able to defeat or escape that monster, so at the last moment, just before he lost his head, he activated the most secret technique of the dark medical ninjutsu, known as the art of fake death. However, because Yomi didn't have Morio's chakra with him, so it took a bit of time to initialize, and before he could complete it, he was already in a death state. The art of fake death is one of the most mysterious forbidden secret techniques of the dark medical ninjutsu that erases all the vital signs of the caster, and the body enters a suspended state, and as long as the body isn't destroyed it would recover sooner or later. The period of resurrection is of course quite long and may even take a few months, depends upon the mastery of the caster and his chakra level at the time of casting. And because Yomi himself doesn't have very high chakra volume, so it would have taken him quite a lot of time to be back to life, and that too only if the technique was successfully cast, which was obviously not the case here because his head was already separated from his torso before he could complete the final step. This is why Yomi was almost dead. After all, no matter how miraculous a jutsu may be, one can't be brought back to life if his body has already been destroyed. Therefore, if not for the coincidental arrival of Hirako and Shino that helped him here, the false death would have become a real death. But no matter how grateful Yomi may have been to the two individuals before him, he was still very vigilant of them because of nearly experiencing death. Noticing Yomi's vigilant look, Hirako said coldly, "Hand over the dark medical ninjutsu, we might consider letting you leave." Since he was still in a weak state, so Yomi didn't try putting up any resistance and immediately nodded, "Okay, I will teach you dark medical ninjutsu, but in return, you must ensure my safety." Shino asked curiously, who was responsible for the massacre here? When he thought of the figure with the black full-body cloak and a black evil spirit mask, coupled with that cold and indifferent tone, Yomi couldn't help but shudder and said with a panic, he is a demon. Hirako raised his eyebrow and said condescendingly, huh, what demon? Just some guy pretending to be a ghost. Say, what is his name? Will he be capable of fighting the god? Yomi blankly looked at the two and muttered in a low voice, his name is Yama. After completing the task of eliminating Yomi's cult, Kuroto immediately returned to Konoha and directly sneaked into his laboratory. Now that the Ryumyaku has been extracted from his body and sealed into the portable gourd artifact, Kuroto no longer has to worry about the risk of Ryumyaku going on a rampage while he uses the Tenseigan Soul Descend. Coming to the laboratory, Kuroto looked at the Kazekage puppet who was standing beside him and thought a little. The security of the laboratory cannot be compromised, no matter what. This laboratory hides most of Kuroto's secrets, and he must ensure that its safety isn't affected. Therefore, Kuroto must see that the Kazekage puppet remains active even when Kuroto uses the Soul Descend. After all, once he uses the Tenseigan Soul Descend to transfer his soul from the main body to the clone body, the Tenseigan itself will become inactive, so Kuroto wouldn't be able to regularly transfer the Tenseigan chakra to the Kazekage puppet, which is required for its working and functioning. So, after thinking a little, he decided to use another method, and that is to seal a large volume of Tenseigan chakra inside the Kazekage puppet. This method isn't that uncommon in the shinobi world. Just before their death, Yandeme-sama and his wife Uzumaki Kushina sealed all their remaining chakra inside the body of their child Uzumaki Naruto, so that they could help Naruto tide over the difficulties in the times of crisis. And Orochimaru also uses the curse seal technique to store his chakra inside other shinobi as a backhand to ensure his resurrection. Therefore, Kuroto can also use a chakra sealing method to ensure the continuous functioning of the Kazekage puppet. Being a full-fledged activist, once Kuroto has an idea, he immediately tries it. With that decision, he turned towards the Kazekage puppet and pressed his right hand on the puppet's chest area, and immediately a huge volume of Tenseigan chakra flowed along with his right hand and transferred into the Kazekage puppet. Instantly, a bluish gleam appeared around the puppet's body. When the amount of chakra transferred was more than enough, Kuroto immediately performed the sealing technique. The four symbols seal. With the completion of the sealing technique, a series of black symbols spread around the chest of the Kazekage puppet and quickly contracted into a small size 4 symbol seal technique symbol on the chest. When Kuroto was done, he casually asked the puppet while monitoring its state, "So, how do you feel?" After a short pause, Kazekage puppet felt it and replied, "Kuroto-sama, with this amount of chakra, if I don't partake in any battle, then the continuous functioning will last for about 3 months give or take." Kuroto nodded in satisfaction. Although a period of 3 months is not very long, it is still more than enough. As for how long the sealed chakra will last if the puppet were to participate in a battle is hard to say, as different amount of chakra is consumed against different opponents, so no one can make an accurate estimation. And that's not very important for now. After dealing with this issue, Kuroto immediately used the Tenseigan Soul Descend technique to transfer his soul into the clone body. After putting on his clothes, and adjusting the Ryumyaku gourd, along with all the necessary tools and his Kusanagi sword around his waist, Kuroto left the laboratory in his water clone body. At its current state, the clone body is obviously far from being perfect to be ready for being used in the Chimera technique as per Kuroto's standards. Firstly, he has to let this clone, which is just an accumulation of the fusion of his and Haku's cells to adapt to his soul to achieve a yin-yang balance between the strength of soul and body. This step is crucial. If Kuroto doesn't do this, then there wouldn't be any essential difference between the Chimera technique he plans to use and the one Hirako plans to. Secondly, Kuroto has to further cultivate the water clone to increase its strength, so that its strength is around the same level as his main body. The reason for doing this is to have the same chakra intensity of all 7 natures to achieve a perfect balance when fusing them through the Chimera technique. Now, this is obviously very difficult because the water clone doesn't have the Tenseigan or anything that would help him reach the level as a Super Kage, but there's no harm in trying. Anyway, he has a lot of time in his hands. Kuroto will eventually find out some method to compensate. Only in this way will he be able to reach a perfect balance of 7 natures, to reach Kekkei Mora. Walking out of the secret laboratory, Kuroto applied a simple transformation technique upon himself to change the color of Clone A's black hair into brown, to avoid dealing with unnecessary troubles, and came to the underground residence where Haku was living temporarily. Seeing Kuroto's arrival, Haku let go of the little rabbit from his hands to the ground and quickly greeted Kuroto, "Kuroto-sama." Kuroto nodded towards Haku and asked, "Are you somewhat used to living here?" The little rabbit that Haku was playing with was actually a test subject that Kuroto didn't use, and after he met Okinabuta he didn't need to use it anymore. Initially, he kept it to use it as food, but because Yui loves rabbits very much, so this one was left alive. Just to make sure that Haku doesn't get bored all the time while he lived in the underground residence, Kuroto decided to bring the little guy here as a playmate for Haku. Now a rabbit as a playmate may sound strange, but it's still better over nothing. Haku nodded repeatedly towards Kuroto's question. With initial greetings out of the way, Kuroto spoke, "Alright, if that's so then it's good, now put Marin in her cage and follow me." After giving this order, Kuroto turned and left the underground residence. Haku also put Marin in her cage and quickly followed behind Kuroto and asked curiously, "Kuroto-sama, are we going to practice ninjutsu?" The corner of Kuroto's lips curved and he spoke, "Yes." While he thought silently to himself, "Unfortunately Haku, you won't, I will be practicing ninjutsu with your help." A short while later, Kuroto and Haku came near a lake at the lower reaches of the Naka River, far from the village, and way out of the patrol range, a safe place to practice ninjutsu and not attract unwanted attention. Coming by the lakeside, Kuroto looked at the sparkling lake water with some emotions. He was reminded of some of his past. Sighing lightly to not think about it, for now. Kuroto turned towards Haku and spoke, "Haku, at Orochimaru-sama's place, you must have learned some water release techniques, right?" Haku nodded ignorantly. With that confirmation, Kuroto pointed towards the lake and said, "Currently we are near a water body, so you can practice all those ninjutsu to higher proficiency, therefore show me all the water release techniques that you have mastered." Haku was a little doubtful, the last time Kuroto ordered him to practice ice release techniques, but how come today he suddenly ordered for him to show water release technique? However, even if the kid was doubtful, he didn't dare refuse or question Kuroto's orders. Haku is still somewhat afraid of Kuroto because of witnessing the battle with Orochimaru. So, nodding as per Kuroto's orders, Haku walked towards the lake and started printing hand seals to use water release techniques. Tiger, ox, tiger, rat, water release, water bullet technique. As soon as he finished printing, a large amount of chakra needed in Haku's stomach and he expelled a large quantity of water from his mouth in the form of a torrent towards the lake. A Class C ninjutsu. After a nod, he added, "Continue." With Kuroto's order, Haku again started printing hand seals to perform other water release ninjutsu. Dragon, tiger, hare, water release, wild water wave. Dragon, tiger, hare, water release, water trumpet. Ox, monkey, hare, rat, boar, bird, ox, horse, bird, rat, tiger, dog, tiger, snake, ox, ram, snake, boar, ram, rat, yang water, monkey, bird, dragon, bird, ox, horse, ram, tiger, snake, rat, monkey, hare, boar, dragon, ram, rat, ox, monkey, bird, yang water, rat, boar, bird, water release, water dragon bullet technique. Naidam-sama's jutsu. Thought Kuroto in surprise. Water gun technique. Water release, rising water slicer. After performing 5 water-style jutsu one after another even with the help of a water source nearby, Haku was already out of breath. Kuroto observed him and asked, "Do you know any other water release techniques?" Haku replied lightly while trying to catch his breath, I can still use the waterfall technique, but I don't have enough chakra left." Waterfall technique. Kuroto was slightly taken aback and asked, "Waterfall technique is the reduced version of the Great Waterfall technique, you learned it at such a young age?" When asked this question, Haku lowered his head and replied, "At Orochimaru-sama's place. If I can't learn ninjutsu, I don't get to have dinner." Kuroto just smiled at Haku's reply and didn't say much. This isn't strange or anything new, even Enko-chan had to suffer from such punishments back when they were training under Orochimaru. Thankfully Kuroto was a researcher and had to practice the Hyuga-style taijutsu, therefore, he wasn't subject to such punishments, but that wasn't the case with Enko, who would repeatedly complain and bad-mouth Orochimaru whenever she would meet Yui. And according to Orochimaru, not giving dinner is just a light punishment, but even such light punishment led Haku to master quite a lot of water release techniques in a short time and at such a young age. This shows that Haku's talent is really exceptional. If Haku could become so dangerous and strong with just wandering around as a mercenary under Zabuza's tutelage, then his future achievements will undoubtedly be highly exceptional under Orochimaru's teachings. Putting away the unnecessary thoughts, Kuroto looked towards the lake and started printing hand seals. Tiger, ox, tiger, rat. As Kuroto completed the hand signs, a very large amount of chakra needed in his stomach, and he immediately expelled an extremely large quantity of water from his mouth in the form of a torrent towards the lake. Water release, water bullet technique. The torrent of water was shot towards the other side of the lake with a howling sound. Haku, who was standing behind Kuroto, was stunned. This water bullet technique was much superior to the one Haku used, as the diameter of the torrent was easily over 2 meters. But Kuroto wasn't finished yet and continued printing hand seals. Dragon, tiger, hare, water release, wild water wave. Dragon, tiger, hare, water release, water trumpet. Ox, monkey, hare, rat, boar, bird, ox, horse, bird, rat, tiger, dog, tiger, snake, ox, ram, snake, boar, ram, rat, yang water, monkey, bird, dragon, bird, ox, horse, ram, tiger, snake, rat, monkey, hare, boar, dragon, ram, rat, ox, monkey, bird, yang water, rat, boar, bird, water release, water dragon bullet technique. Water gun technique. Water release, rising water slicer. Without any pause, one by one Kuroto performed all the other 5 water release techniques in the same order that Haku previously performed. After the effects of water release gradually faded, Haku was left speechless as he looked at the still raging water in the lake along with the condensed moisture in the air that turned into the fog. On the other side, Kuroto, who just performed 6 water release ninjutsu, not only didn't look any tired but muttered in disappointment, "It looks like it would take some time for the flow of chakra to become smooth enough in this clone body." At this time Haku calmed himself and looked at Kuroto with admiration. "Kuroto-sama, I didn't expect that you would be so proficient and powerful in using the water release." Kuroto smiled lightly and spoke, "What amazing. I just learned these from watching you." "What?" Haku was stunned and immediately asked, "Does that mean, this is the first time you have used water release?" Kuroto nodded, "Indeed, this is the first time I have performed water release techniques, and it appears that it would still take some work for me to gain some proficiency in them." When Haku heard Kuroto's words, he couldn't help but look at Kuroto with more admiration. Although Haku is very young, however, considering that he has awakened the ice release Kekii Genkai, therefore, his perception of water nature is very high, and he can clearly feel that Kuroto-sama has a frightening level of water nature chakra within him. Because of this, Haku initially believed that even if water release wasn't Kuroto's exclusive and most powerful nature, he would still be quite familiar with water ninjutsu. And now that Haku heard that this is the first time Kuroto has used the water release techniques, so it is hard to imagine to what extent will Kuroto grow in just water release techniques. After answering a few of Haku's questions, Kuroto didn't explain anymore and said, "Follow me." With that said, Kuroto jumped on the lake surface and walked towards its center using the water walking technique. Following Kuroto's order, Haku took a deep breath and carefully stepped on the water surface to keep up with Kuroto. Water walking isn't a difficult task for Haku, especially because of his Kekii Genkai, but because he is still very young, and the fact that the lake water is still very chaotic, therefore, he has to be a bit careful not to fall over. The upper reaches of the Naka River. Uchiha Itachi was walking along the river bank with a small backpack on his back. As he has been growing older, Itachi became more and more aware of the contradiction between the clan and the village. The situation after Uchiha Shinichi's defection has only become very restless, and it seems that there is no room for peace between the two factions. The only one still resolved to work between the two parties for peace is Uchiha Shisui, which has somehow maintained a short-term calm. Perhaps it was because the information about Uchiha Shisui having awakened the Manjikyu was now known to both the faction that both parties are a bit cautious of the other and are hesitating to be the first to make any move, but everyone understands that Shisui wouldn't be able to bridge the rift for forever. Sooner or later, the two sides will have to reach a conclusion. Itachi was thinking and walking while waving the short wooden twig in his hand. It seems as if one side, before Itachi could complete his sentence, a crashing sound echoed from the distance that prompted him to put aside his thoughts for now and focus on the source. Following the direction of the sound, a hazy mist appeared on the horizon in the distant sky and a beautiful rainbow caught his eye under the sunlight. "It's beautiful. I wish Izumi could have seen this." Looking at the beautiful rainbow, the depressed Itachi had a rare smile on his face. But now was not the time to think about it, because he soon realized that someone was using powerful ninjutsu in the distance and he quickened his pace to take a look. Itachi had only taken a few steps and there was another loud noise from the same direction, and this time even the forest appeared somewhat restless as the fierce wind started blowing in the forest along with the birds and beast running away. "Is anyone fighting by the lake?" was Itachi's thought while he had almost reached the lake. Immediately realizing that something was wrong, Itachi hurriedly jumped on the nearest tree. Crash! Gurgling, sweep. As soon as he landed and the tree, a huge wave violently came crashing and submerged a part of the surrounding forest in water. Itachi was shocked. Who can use such high-level water release in Konoha? Even though Itachi has always been at the top of his peers, it was still very difficult for him to imagine who could have used such high-level water release jutsu in Konoha, which could almost submerge a part of the surrounding forest. From what he knows, only Naidame-sama would have been capable of such extraordinary feats. Other than Senju Tobarama, who has been dead for decades, it was hard to imagine any one of the Konoha shinobi having such mastery over water release. At the center of the lake, Kuroto took a deep breath while thinking. Using Haku's cells has clearly made the water affinity of this clone incredibly terrifying. Unlike Kuroto, who was still very calm and analyzing the clone's attributes, Haku on the side had a look of horror as he tried not to keel over, barely supporting himself by clutching the end of Kuroto's robe. He didn't expect that when Kuroto-sama tried his best, the result would be so terrifying. Pitter. Patter. He didn't have much time to calm himself as it started raining heavily. Looking up at the sky, Haku found that the increased moisture in the air condensed into thick clouds covering the previously sunny sky with a gloomy look and rained down heavily. Even Kuroto was slightly embarrassed and scratched the side of his cheek awkwardly. It seems I went a little overboard. Whatever may have been the result, but Kuroto has confirmed that the water affinity of this clone is unparalleled, exactly as he intended. So with the unparalleled water chakra affinity, additionally he had Ryumyaku Gourd to provide continuous chakra support coupled with the presence of many water sources nearby. The power of ninjutsu used by the water clone was in full display and went to the extent that even Kuroto was a little surprised. Now that the water level in the lake has increased so much, Kuroto also realized that it might have attracted some attention. Such movements would obviously be noticed, so without any more delay, Kuroto immediately picked up the dazed Haku and disappeared. As soon as Kuroto's figure disappeared, Itachi appeared on the lake. Seeing that the water surface of the lake has increased so much that has caused the surrounding forest to be submerged and the pitter-patter of rain that only hit this area while the other side still had the sun shining brightly changed Itachi's expression to a more serious one. While looking around his surroundings to find some clue as to the cause of this commotion, 4 figures that were dressed in umbu black cloak appeared by the lakeside. Glancing at the young kid on the side, the captain of the squad asked, "Are you the one responsible for this?" Itachi shook his head. "No, I just came here." The umbu captain nodded, and before he could ask any further, Itachi hurriedly told him everything he knew. After listening to Itachi's narration, the umbu captain was also a little nervous. Judging from the situation around, it does seem as if a fierce battle took place here not long ago, and the 2 sides fighting in the battle have to be extremely powerful ninjas. From what he can guess, both the sides would be around the level of a jonin. But the umbu captain was also a little confused as to why are there no signs of use of any other element. It couldn't have been that both the side only fought using the water release techniques, right? The situation is both weird and dangerous, so it would best be reported to Hokage-sama as soon as possible. The troubled times in Konoha haven't been solved yet, so such unusual movements could be quite disturbing. Reporting it to Hokage-sama as soon as possible is the best course of action. After a light sigh, he spoke. "The opponent may have not gone too far. It is still dangerous here. You should go back to the village quickly." After dropping Haku back to the underground residence, Kuroto returned to his secret laboratory. Although his actions went a little overboard in using the water ninjutsu and attracted some attention, Kuroto was still very satisfied with Clone A's water chakra affinity. While recording data, Kuroto planned the next step. It is quite unclear as to why was the creation of water clone went unexpectedly smooth. Perhaps it could be related to the high fusion compatibility between his and Haku's cells, or maybe somehow related to the stability of the water element. As for why is the affinity of the water clone so high? Kuroto does have a conjecture, and it's probably because of the active genes of his main body, but he can't be sure about it until more test results are obtained, but it is still the most logical explanation. In short, whatever may be the reason, the experiment of water clone creation went better than Kuroto's initial expectations. Now the next thing I have to focus on is the adaptation of soul with the clone body. After recording all the data, Kuroto thoughtfully closed the data scroll in his hand. The process of achieving soul and body balance is a water-milling work. Simply put, it would require Kuroto to stay in the clone body for a long time. Only by spending time in the clone body will the fit be perfect. According to Kuroto's estimation, as long as his soul just resides in the clone body for 3 years, then the clone would become a perfect fit. 3 years is obviously too long. Based on the 3 years calculation, it would take a total of 18 years to obtain a perfect body-soul fit with the 6 different clones of 6 different chakra natures. 18 years doesn't seem too long to become the supreme god of the shinobi world by achieving Kekkei Mora, but considering that the Fourth Great Shinobi War broke out about 14 to 15 years later as per the original timeline, Kuroto obviously doesn't have 18 years in his hand. And taking the butterfly effect into account, Kuroto thinks that he doesn't even have 14 years in his hand. So, speeding up the process is the only option. Holding his chin, Kuroto thought about it a little. In addition to simply spending time in the clone body, participating in battles can also increase the adaptation speed between the body and soul. This is because, during a battle, the body and soul are under constant high-speed rotation, therefore, the speed of adaptation increases several times. And Kuroto knows that the shinobi world may lack anything, but there would never be a shortage of battles. Having made up his mind, Kuroto planned his further actions with this decision. Since the fighting style of the water clone is completely different from the Yin body, therefore, Kuroto can't continue to use the Yama disguise while in this body. Therefore, Kuroto spent a lot of time preparing another disguise for the water clone. The base was kept similar to the Yama disguise, a full-body midnight black cloak with the golden pattern over it, which was again complex sealing symbol Kuroto sewed with gold thread, then a symbol of water element around the chest part, and 5 symbols of the basic chakra element printed in a circle around the yin-yang symbol at the center at the back. Finally, a blue evil spirit mask to symbolize the water element. Of course, the mask again had the complex sealing symbols on the inner side to interfere with the perception and search type ninjutsu. Donning the cloak and the mask over his vest, Kuroto looked at his image in the mirror and nodded in appreciation, and finally muttered, "Since this is water clone, then I will need another alias. How about Suijin? The Shinto god of water." "Yup, Suijin seems alright." "Yosh, Suijin it is." With that decided, Kuroto left a shadow clone in the village and secretly sneaked out of Konoha as Suijin. 1 week later, Suijin kicked the corpse lying before him with a disappointed expression. In order to increase the soul adaptation with the clone body, Suijin took a bounty mission from the black market. The bounty mission clearly stated that the target is a Jonin class missing nin from Kyuzugakure, but the result highly disappointed Suijin. What Jonin? This guy is barely even a Chunin. It took only 2 small moves to solve the target. Puff. While Suijin was cleaning up the battlefield, the familiar figure of Kasai emerged with a puff of white smoke. As soon as the orange cat emerged out of the white smoke, it stretched out its paw and demanded, "Meow, 1000 Ryo." Suijin immediately had an annoyed face. "Can't you change the opening sentence?" Kasai hesitated a little and finally nodded with a determined expression as if it had put a great deal of effort to follow his request. "Alright, but you have to increase the money." Suijin immediately denied, "Forget it, I suddenly found out that I like your opening line very much, you must never change it for the rest of your life." With that said, Suijin passed the money and took the communication scroll, and opened it. The mysterious person the organization has been looking for was never found. Recently, the organization has been eyeing a bounty ninja with the name Yama. That freak Kakazu said that this Yama is very mysterious and very strong, and strangely enough, until now the organization hasn't found any leads on him. Even after so much investigation, there is simply no trace. Rather than questioning how strong the bounty ninja can be, I tend to think that how can a strong person become a bounty ninja? It's quite strange that this Yama guy is working as a bounty ninja if his strength is as strong as Kakazu says, don't you think so, boss? Suijin nodded while reading the last sentence. Indeed, as Shinichi spoke, generally strong shinobi wouldn't opt to work as black market bounty hunters. This is very simple because either they don't need to do to being affiliated to some shinobi villages or they can just establish their own small villages or organization. The reason why he is working as a bounty ninja because his Umbu identity doesn't allow him to take on simple missions, and he will also be under the village's monitoring. Anyway, after sending away the greedy cat, Suijin sealed the corpse in a storage scroll and went to the nearest black market branch. As usual, the branch was hidden with a cover of a bar. Suijin directly went inside, confirmed the password, and placed the corpse before the branch boss, and added, "Bring me the latest edition of your mission book." The branch boss passed over the mission book and got busy with the processing work. After some time, the boss asked tentatively, "Suijin-sama, what is your relationship with Yama-sama?" Because the dress code of both Yama and Suijin is very similar with only slight differences, therefore, the boss was a bit curious. After all, Yama has gained a very high reputation in the black market circle. Suijin didn't look up, just replied casually, "Yama is our leader." As soon as he heard this, the black market boss immediately became more diligent. Even a shinobi village doesn't dare to take a group of organized and powerful ninjas lightly, let alone him, who is just a small man with not much power. What's more, it is believed that Yama's strength is very high, so this Suijin must also be extremely strong if he belongs to the same organization. Therefore, the other party is definitely not someone the black market boss could afford to offend. While the black market boss intended to immediately process the bounty, Suijin, who was flipping through the pages of the mission booklet, suddenly stopped as he perceived a strong chakra signature approaching him. Byakugan. Turning his head to look in the direction after activating his Byakugan, he observed the two people dressed in the iconic black cloak with red cloud prints over it, slowly walking towards the black market branch. Akatsuki. Suijin was slightly surprised when he noticed who the other party was. He didn't expect that not long ago Uchiha Shinichi passed him the information about the Akatsuki searching for his in-body disguise, Yama, and now he has run into two of Akatsuki members. After thinking a little while the two of the Akatsuki members were calmly coming towards the black market branch, Suijin decided to walk out and quietly stand on the street. As soon as Suijin walked out of the gate, the two members of the Akatsuki noticed Suijin wearing the black cloak and an evil spirit mask. They immediately stopped and faced off the other party. The pedestrians passing by also noticed the strangeness of the two parties. Whether it was the two members of the Akatsuki, wearing a matching black cloak with red cloud prints, coupled with Kasa with two bells, or Suijin wearing a black cloak with golden sewing, water symbol print around the chest along with an evil spirit mask, don't look the kind of people you would want to mess around with, so the pedestrians quickly ran away from here as soon as possible. In just a few moments the bustling and noisy street became silent. At this time, the two members of the Akatsuki took off their hats and asked, "Are you the bounty nin, Yama?" After a short silence of observing the two, Suijin spoke with a light chuckle, "Unfortunately, you have found the wrong person, I am Suijin." Of the two members of the Akatsuki, Suijin is only familiar with one, the other looked like some ordinary middle-aged dude that can't recognize even after searching his memories for a long time. Therefore, Suijin reached the conclusion that this unknown middle-aged member must have died before the beginning of the plot in the original story. Keikaku frowned, and spoke in a deep voice, "Suijin. Ha, are you trying to fool me?" When he heard Kakazu say so, Suijin immediately understood that Kakazu must have memorized the details of his Yama disguise and became confused with the current one. Therefore, Kakazu thought that he was Yama, so pointing at his mask, Suijin spoke, "You can clearly see this thing here, I am Suijin, not Yama. But if you have some entrustment for him, you can tell me about it, I'll pass on the message to him." After noticing the small detail, the second Akatsuki member murmured in Kakazu's ear, "His mask is different from the one Yama wears, and look at that cloak too, the symbol around the chest is that of water, not in, so he shouldn't be Yama, but I think that they both should be members of the same organization." Kakazu's attitude remained calm and he questioned in a condescending tone, "Tell me where I can find Yama, along with all the information about your organization." Kakazu knew just how many freaks are part of the Akatsuki, so he didn't really put any other organization or a shinobi village in his eyes. Can the Kage of any village defeat pain? No. Is Kakazu himself afraid of any Kage? No. So does he fear them? Obviously no. Hearing Kakazu's question, Suijin just shrugged, "Come on, catch me and you'll know everything." Kakazu said coldly, "You want to die that badly?" Without any more nonsense, Suijin turned to the side and dashed away from the town. There are many civilians in this town, and if Suijin fights the Akatsuki duo here, the town would most certainly be destroyed along with the death of many civilians, even if he tries to restrain himself. Now it's not that Suijin cares about the civilians or anything, but involving ignorant people in a serious mess is not something he wants to do unless he has no other choice. Therefore, leading the Akatsuki duo out of the town is the best course of action. It seems as if Kakazu also understood Suijin's approach, and being the leading figure in the black market circle, he didn't want the branch to be destroyed because of his fighting, so he immediately chased out of the town. Seeing that the three people went out of the town to resolve their issues, the black market bounty exchange master Zenji breathed a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, the three of them didn't fight here. In the forest outside the town. Whoosh! 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 Accompanied by the sound of breaking wind, the three figures appeared in the forest, one after another. Suijin kept one hand on his waist, he was sort of excited to fight Kakazu. Although the ranking of the various Akatsuki members based on their strength is actually very controversial as different people believed one to be stronger than the other, putting all that aside, Kakazu's personal strength is unquestionable. Being the oldest shinobi alive, the mere wealth of his experience of going through thousands of battles alone makes him a force to be reckoned with. Not to mention he and Haiden captured the Nibi and Nanabai. Even if it was Team 10 together with Kakashi, they couldn't suppress Kakazu and would have surely died if not for Team 7 to arrive as reinforcement at the right time. In fact, Kakashi's heart would have also become Kakazu's if not for Naruto. At that time, Kakashi was the most elite ninja of Konoha excluding the two Sannin. From these feats alone one can imagine just how strong Kakazu actually is. After all, being able to catch two-tailed beasts is not a joke. And since the soul is currently in Tsuejin body, so he can't use the Tenseigan, therefore facing Kakazu is a very difficult challenge for him. But that's good because the challenges are exactly what he needs now. Coming all the way here, Kakazu said impatiently, I really don't like myself to get involved with anyone when I don't gain something from them. Sai, I'll give you one last chance, either you hand over all the information about Yama and I spare your life, or you can die here, your choice. Tsuejin didn't bother answering and directly printed hand seals. Water release, water severing slash. Wish. A high-pressure thin jet of water immediately spouted out of Tsuejin's mouth and directly went towards the Akatsuki duo with an extremely fast pace. Both Kakazu and another member jumped away, avoiding the severing water slash. 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 The thin jet of water was extremely sharp and immediately cut off the trees in the path. After dodging the first attack very closely, both Kakazu and the second guy got ready for battle with a serious expression. The water-severing slash that Tsuejin used is the weakened version of the Nidaime Hokage's water-severing wave, and the power displayed by this water-severing slash was not any inferior to a Class A ninjutsu, Chidori. From the first tentative attack itself, Kakazu understands that the opponent could be a bit tricky and unbuttoned the Akatsuki cloak, revealing his ragdoll-like stitched body held together by hundreds of thick black threads, and 4 animal masks that were sewn onto his back. Taking out the big gun so soon? Thought Kuroto, and murmured in a low voice, Ha, should I be proud of myself or curse myself? Roar. With a roar, the 4 white masks with threads separated from Kakazu's back and scattered around. Earth Grudge Fear, the secret forbidden technique of Takigakure. As soon as the 4 masks came out, Tsuejin observed them with his Byakugan. In the Byakugan vision, he could see that these masks gave off a bad chakra, and somehow, each of them possessed independent chakra sources, which was rather strange and not so at the same time. While Tsuejin was observing the masks, the other nameless Akatsuki member armed with a long sword rushed forward. Not bothering to turn aside, Tsuejin just printed hand seals and tapped his foot. Tiger, snake, rat, snake, tiger. Water release, water formation wall. In an instant, a wall of water rises from the ground and blocked the nameless individual's Kenjutsu attack. At the same moment, a hand passed through the water wall and clutched the nameless Kenjutsu user's throat, and traps him in the water prison technique. The whole process just took a single breath and the nameless member was already captured. In fact, the process went too smoothly that even Tsuejin couldn't believe it. However, while Tsuejin was dazed, the surrounding light dimmed, and a dazzling electric current rushed towards him. Lightning release, false darkness. Tsuejin subconsciously shielded against the attack by putting the trapped Akatsuki member before him to block the attack. ZZ. However, the sheer force of the false darkness was extremely destructive, so even though Tsuejin somehow blocked the attack, he was still paralyzed by it because the lightning was conducted through the water. Dropping the corpse of the nameless Akatsuki member, Tsuejin immediately leaped back and landed on the nearby tree while gritting his teeth to resist the paralysis effect. Looking at the Akatsuki member who had fallen to the ground and died, Tsuejin couldn't help but snort, aren't you a bit cruel to your partner? Well, what do I know, it only makes things easier for me. Kakazu was not affected by Tsuejin's words and just flashed a Glasgow smile. With the obstruction removed, you will be the next. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.